if you're not selecting for competency, you're just selecting for loyalty, for people who will go along to get along, that also compounds. And I think that's why we're having the competency crisis now, right? Is that the people who are selected to survive in that kind of regime are not really capable of solving problems. And when you get a few generations down the line or a few decades down the line of that, the people who remain in power are just not suited to solve the problems that are created long term by that kind of system. Whereas conversely, those who have gained the strength of having to survive in a market like venture capital or running a real business, they've exercised those muscles to know how to actually tackle these issues. So yeah, I think maybe even as like Michael Malice says, like our enemies are not that, smart or competent. You just have to have the will, to your point earlier, to go do things. You just have to be willing to actually risk enacting those changes and taking bold steps. And we'll find out very quickly that they're a paper tiger.
So I actually want to ask you a little bit about corporate charity, right? Given your background, you probably know a little bit more about this than the average bear. So obviously, a large part of this has been laid clear, right? We know where the money is coming from. But do you want to talk a little bit about these NGOs and these kind of corporate interests and how they intersect?
Yeah, a little bit. So this is something that has kind of been known going back to Renee Wormser, who wrote Foundations, Their Power and Influence, the Reese Committee with Renee Wormser, Norman Dodd. A lot of the John Birch Society people were very big into this. So like this isn't necessarily like a new topic. But the framework that I think helps to understand it, that just kind of makes it, what's not obvious is it's influence peddling. So the stated purpose of any of these activities is not really what it is. What it produces is the purpose of whatever it is. So any of these charities or, one, it's a tax advantaged way to move funds. So you get more bang for your buck because you're avoiding the tax drag that you would have with like a traditional company. Two, what you're really subsidizing is the payroll who are on the boards of these foundations. It's a legal way of doing bribery. So it's just a structure. In fact, anybody who has their like TEP credential, that TEP credential from step.org, any kind of like family office or wealth management of like anyone who has over like $100 million, like this is kind of like the formula that's very well known for why. That's why every Hollywood actor who has all this money is going to create some kind of charity foundation or business that seems like it's losing money on paper. But yeah, what they're buying is that patronage network. It really is as simple as it's never the stated purpose of whatever it is. It's so that they can be in the room with certain people and rub elbows with them and find out what they're doing and share that kind of information. And, it kind of ties into, just like that decoupling between profitability and capital appreciation, the difference in mindset between like, well, does this business actually do something that people want, or is it just a number on a spreadsheet that goes up? Similarly, with the kind of what's happened with the economy in general and with social media in general is this is how that luxury belief of the left of post-scarcity and fully automated gay space communism is allowed to transpire. And what they take up as the alternative to that, and as Thorstein Veblen covered in Theory of the Leisure classes, then they start competing for the zero-sum game of like social status. I mean, that's also why, speaking of charities, my name is the one that's on the side of the wing of the hospital, right? Or mine is the MacArthur Genius Grant or something like that, right? Like that's how power and influence is wielded within these sorts of circles, is instead of it being about material prosperity, because they feel like, well, what could I buy that makes my life feel that much better? What they're really competing with each other is for social status. And, that's done through these kinds of social games and social networks, and it's pay to play.
Sorry, I just accidentally muted, then unmuted myself. Yeah, there's something to that, right? And again, right, if we're talking about incentives, the regime has done an astonishingly good job of, equivocating status with things that benefit them, right? Like good people do things that benefit, the global American empire. It's it's simple, but it's shockingly effective. And again, this is something that a lot of the libertarian world gets very wrong. Is this they have this idea of the economy and government as two separate entities.
Hmm.
And what's been made clear is we live in something much closer to a command economy than we ever thought, right? That the government just gives money to companies to do things, which is really only slightly different than kind of the Soviet system, right?
Yeah, so that's actually the great thing. Going back to discussing sovereign wealth funds with Prude and Geo yesterday as well, is that's basically the tacit admission there. It was easier for China and then like a lot of these Middle Eastern oil companies that originally started up sovereign wealth funds to do that. But it's the myth of neutral institutions is all it boils down to. Is that yeah, we're finally peeling back that illusion, or it's a story that everybody knew wasn't true, but they kept telling the story anyway, of that government is supposed to be like a neutral referee. No, the state is an active actor in all of these things. More than 50% of GDP. I think last I looked at it was like 63% of GDP comes from government itself, and I'm not even sure. I'd have to look at the how that was calculated, but that may not even be including companies that get um, subsidies or government contracts or what have you. So that pushes that number up way higher. And yeah, as we think through these things, because I know that there's going to be the criticism, especially from the more libertarian-minded people, of, oh, well, now we have, an insular team, the CEO king who's going to be in the position to pick winners and losers inside of a sovereign wealth fund or decide what sectors of the economy, if we're going to reshore manufacturing, they're going to be, picking who's going to get that, or how that's going to be done. And how is that any different than like Solana or Barissima or something? Um, and yeah, that's true. One, I think I've elaborated on where the incentive structure is now more aligned that they have a pressure to actually be productive as opposed to it being pure graft.